Hi, and welcome to week 14 of the 2025 spring semester in English 1302. All right, today we're covering the life and times and the poetry of William Wordsworth, a renowned British poet of the Romantic era, one of the Romantic poets. And I've already posted the PowerPoint and a YouTube video for additional reference. But let me just kind of summarize that here. Okay, his nickname is the Walking Poet because he liked to walk. He loved to get out and just walk, and they would walk for days and weeks. Either he by himself or him with his good friend Coleridge. They would go on these lengthy walking tours of England and neighboring countries. Now, why? Well, first of all, he enjoyed being in nature. He enjoyed being outdoors, being surrounded by trees and flowers and birds and just all sorts of natural beauty and wonder and stuff. But secondly, he liked to get out of the house to get away from sickness and illness. So it's partly a health issue, plus it really didn't cost much. This part's a little confusing to students because if you were born here in West Texas, and I said, let's walk to the next town, it would be Slayton or Idlewild or Shallowater or something, and it would take a day or two, a long, hot, dry, dusty trip, not much fun. But in England, especially back in the 1700s, small towns were much closer. And you could walk for an hour or two and be to the next town. And each town had a small pub which provided meals and generally had housing there. So it's not like you had to pack up a whole van full of camping supplies to do a walking tour. And the weather is generally pretty, well, at certain times of the year, it's pretty mild. And he went a lot to England and France and different places. But he really enjoyed being outdoors. And for that reason, there's really only one theme. We look at Robert Frost, and he's got 6 or 8 major themes. Same thing with Emily Dickinson, same thing with most poets. But William Wordsworth only has one theme, and that is nature. Now, ironically, if you look at the poems that we've chosen to read this semester, 2 of them have nothing to do with nature, and one of them just barely has anything to do with nature. The world is too much with us, he says. Gosh, I'd rather be a pagan in a worn-out creed, and basically implies I'd rather go to hell than not be able to appreciate nature. Although he also says, he attributes nature to God, so he's not a pagan. He says, I'd rather, if I couldn't appreciate the beauty of nature, I'd rather be a pagan. But he's not. London, 1802. Now, there are some words you're going to have to look up here, okay? And London, 1802, you need to know what a fen is. It's a swamp. You'll have to look up. He's got some important metaphors here. Okay, London, 1802, the third line down. He says, Milton, you should look up John Milton so you know who he is. Thou should be living as this hour England hath need of thee. She is a swamp of stagnant waters, altar, sword, and pen. So those 3 things represent bigger things, bigger ideas. The altar, of course, represents the church. He's saying the church or religion or spirituality in England in 1802 is the pits. It's bottomed out. He says the sword, of course, represents the military. The military is corrupt. And the pen represents writers, poetry, writers, and by extension, all arts. He's saying, our military, our spirituality, and our arts are all just terrible. They're really, really worse shape. So we need somebody to be alive to inspire us again, and that would be you, John Milton. Then the world is too much with us. Got some good personification going on there, and we basically talked about that already. Nuns fret not at their convent's narrow room. You're going to need to look up a few words here. But he's basically saying that most people who choose to do what they want to do are not bothered by small areas. In fact, a small area with clear boundaries can represent clear lines of demarcation, represent clear responsibilities. If you're living just within your convent, just within your cell, and a cell is what they call the room where a nun or a monk lived. And he said, you don't need a palace, you don't need a mansion to live in. And if you find yourself with too much room and you're wondering what's going on, what to do with your life, then consider downsizing and take up no more space than just what a poem takes up. He talks about the sonnet's scanty ground. 17 lines of poetry is a Shakespearean sonnet. And so he's saying, if I can write a poem in 17 lines and fully express myself, then some limitations are good. And I keep looking at the wrong camera here. Then, of course, the last poem for the semester, just a wonderful poem. I wandered lonely as a cloud, just completely all about nature. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, personification, a host of golden daffodils. I encourage you to read that for yourself. And don't forget, with this poem and all these poems, if you read them several times, if you'll look up the words you don't know, if you'll think about what they're trying to say and what else they could mean, write down the words you don't know, kind of mark up the poem, get involved with it a little bit, you'll understand it a lot better. Back to the life and times of William Wordsworth. He was born in 1770, so just a little bit before the American Revolution, kind of gives you an idea. He published a book of poetry called An Evening Walk in 1789, and then as you read through, you'll notice he republished this same book a couple of times, just with revisions and different introductions, and he starts walking to Switzerland, France, and Germany, and when he goes to France, he meets and falls in love with this beautiful French girl named Annette Vaillant. Unfortunately, England and France were pretty much constantly at war. They were big rivals, didn't like each other. So just right after he meets this girl and has a daughter with her, the war flares up again, and he has to come home so he can make some money. But he's a responsible adult, and so he continues to support the girl he fell in love with, Annette, and their daughter, basically throughout the rest of his life. Like a lot of people, he was concerned with two things. One, with money. Now, his family was wealthy, but his parents died basically without a will, and so it took a long time for him to come into the money that was actually owed to him. Really, it's not until he's in his 30s he receives a long-delayed inheritance, and he marries Mary Hutchinson, who's an old friend of his, has 5 children with her, and still doing lots and lots of walking. Becomes good friends with Samuel Taylor Coleridge, whom you remember from Rime of the Ancient Mariner and the Albatross and all that. And just like most other poets, when he first starts writing poetry, it's bad. It's bad poetry. It doesn't sell well. It's not highly recognized. But then he works on it, he improves it, and it continues to get better. That's why we're reading just some of the later stuff. And he becomes the Poet Laureate of England, which is a huge honor. There's only one at a time, and it's really is a big deal, and people really like him in his later years. If you're looking for ways to separate, we're only doing 3 poets this semester: Robert Frost, Emily Dickinson, and William Wordsworth. If you're looking for ways to separate these individuals in your mind, here's one way. William Wordsworth was the walking poet. William Wordsworth, walking poet, and became very famous for focusing more on emotion than on great heroic adventure or logic and reasoning. He really shifted the whole poetry movement from logic and reasoning to emotion and feeling. Robert Frost, on the other hand, now he's just flat out a great poet. He's an American poet, of course, but his poetry, from day one, when he publishes his first book, just right out of the block, overnight success. His first book sells very well, and all his other books sell very well, so he's an overnight success. Emily Dickinson, on the other hand, never sold a book of poetry. She published just a few poems during her lifetime. She didn't want her poems published. She requested they be burned upon her death. So, and her main theme, I know I listed 6 or 8 for you, but her main theme was really isolation and questioning existence. Frost's main theme, and again, there are 5 or 6 of those there for you, but his main theme was nature as a source of wisdom. He admired nature, he liked nature, but he didn't admire it simply for its beauty, he admired it for what we could learn from it. So you got the 3 poets there for you, and if you look at the syllabus, you got those poems coming up. We're going to have we're going to push back the 4th quiz to next week, and then your final exam is going to be the week of finals, of course, which I think is going to be Tuesday, May the 6th. I can't give it to you that Thursday, May the 8th, because the grades are due the next day. So be looking for more. I'll publish more announcements and more videos about that. And by the way, that thing about the final exam was for my online classes. If you're in one of my hybrid classes, I'll make announcements in class about your final exams. All right, good luck. We're getting ready to wrap her up. If you have any questions, let me know.